what does a defining moment look like? That tipping point between looking back and moving forward, between celebrating the past and boldly defining the future. At the United States Air Force Academy, defining moments have taken many forms. In 1959, the Academy commissioned its first second lieutenants. In 1976, female cadets were first admitted. And in 2020, the first graduates were commissioned into the U.S. Space Force. The Academy now arrives at another defining moment, and its mission has never been more important. As the Air Force Academy looks to the future, it is faced with an increasingly complicated, interconnected world, one marked by unprecedented advancements in technology and shifts in culture. And it stands ready to provide tomorrow's leaders with the intellectual capacity, strength, and resiliency required to confront the challenges of our time. To help them prepare for these challenges, the Air Force Academy Foundation and the Association of Graduates together are undertaking the most significant comprehensive fundraising and engagement campaign in the Academy's history. This bold vision is our defining moment for the Academy. New partnerships will spur academic innovation in the classroom and attract nationally recognized scholars. Advancements in human performance and world-class facilities will push cadet athletes toward greater moral and physical development. An enhanced focus on interpersonal leadership and the future of the profession of arms will accelerate individual cadet growth. More opportunities for alumni engagement will help invigorate and fortify the long blue line as it strengthens its connection to the Academy. Private support will help achieve these goals, offering each cadet the richest academic, military, and athletic experience that readies them for leadership. With your help, we are defining the future for the next generations of the long blue line, the future airmen and guardians, pilots, astronauts, and doctors, CEOs and entrepreneurs, lawyers and teachers, inventors and investors, ministers, public servants, and coaches. Leaders. Join us.
Well, thank you and good evening to all. Welcome to the View of DC to mark the U.S. Air Force Academy's public launch of the most significant comprehensive campaign in our Academy's history. I'm Mike Gould, and I'm proud to be representing the spirit of 76, and I hold the absolute 76? There we go. And I am blessed with the honor of being Paula Gould's husband. And I have the absolute privilege of serving our Academy as the CEO of the Association of Graduates and the Air Force Academy Foundation. So here we go, thank you. As your host and MC tonight, I'd like to welcome all of you to what promises to be a fun, high-energy evening. And first, before we get rolling too far, I want to welcome a bevy of distinguished guests. And I'm going to ask you to please hold your applause until I tell you to clap. So let's get rolling here. First, Lieutenant General Rich Dickey Harpo Clark, class of '86, USAFA's 21st superintendent, and his wife Amy, backed up by the leadership team at the Academy, Command Chief Master Sergeant Sarah Sparks, Commandant of Cadets, Brigadier General Max Moga, class of '95, Dean of the Faculty, Brigadier General Linnell Latendra, class of '96, Director of Athletics, Mr. Nate Pine and his wife Stephanie, the CEO of the Air Force Academy Athletic Corporation, Dr. Nancy Hickson, the President of the Air Force Academy Foundation and Association of Graduates from the class of '97, Mr. Mark Hilley. Now, in addition, we're honored to have with us tonight the 19th Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, General Norty Schwartz, class of '73, and his wife, Susie. Okay. And our guest speaker tonight, you'll hear more about later, our former White House press secretary under President George W. Bush, Mr. Ari Fleischer. There you go, buddy. Hey, and I'd also like to recognize our campaign volunteers across the country, and several are here tonight. Alex Gilbert, class of '87, Alex Granados, class of '04, Jim McWeeny, class of '88, and Dave Yost, class of '69. And a special welcome to AOG and Foundation board directors who are all over the room tonight, made a special effort to join us. Please offer all of our distinguished guests a big round of applause. So tonight, we officially launch the public phase of our comprehensive campaign, Defining Our Future. The Air Force Academy Association of Graduates and Foundation together embark in this campaign amid dynamic times for our country, and I think you'd all agree, marked recently with the heroic and sacrificial actions of airmen, soldiers, sailors, and Marines in Afghanistan. Tonight we honor them, and we honor the service of all who are on the ground and in the air, supporting from afar our actions in Afghanistan over the past 20 years. The events of the past few weeks have shown us that our world is rapidly changing. New threats to our security and to our freedoms are constantly emerging. Unprecedented advancements in technology, artificial intelligence, and digital dependency are fundamentally altering the landscape of our national security. Now, these dynamic changes demand that Air Force Academy cadets be prepared to lead with agility, with teamwork, and unmatched technological sophistication and capabilities in the air, space, and cyber domains. In light of this challenging environment, the Air Force Academy must be better than ever. So our support, your support, becomes even more important than ever. That's why we've embarked on this comprehensive campaign. Donors will contribute $270 million or more in support of the Academy's most critical strategic priorities. And thanks to the vision and generosity of so many of you in this room tonight, I'm excited to announce that we are almost 2/3 of the way to that $270 million goal. Thank you. Thank you. Now, at the same time, our aim as we run through this campaign is to nurture a thriving and engaged graduate community. We aspire to do several things during the next 3 to 4 years. Increase awareness, engagement, and participation among all Academy graduates, and we need your help with that. We aim to enhance institutional pride among our complete community of graduates and friends, and to tell the story of philanthropy's impact on our Air Force Academy's mission. As a key early step, I'm happy to announce tonight, later this year, the AOG is expanding membership in our association to all graduates, past and future, for life, free of charge. So we invite your continued partnership in advancing and defining the future of the U.S. Air Force Academy through this historic campaign. Thank you all for being here. I would like you to now enjoy your dinner and great table conversation, and we'll be back in about half hour to start the program. Enjoy. Presentations that I think you're going to really enjoy. I'm going to first introduce our superintendent, Lieutenant General Rich Clark, who is entering his second year as the 21st superintendent of our academy. He had previously served as Commandant of Cadets from 2010 to 2012, and I understand if he had had any kind of a boss, he would have done some even greater things during that assignment. But he survived, and now 1 year into the 7th command opportunity, General Clark is doing a fantastic job at our academy. In addition to being Commandant and Superintendent, he has also commanded the 34th Bomb Squadron at Ellsworth, the 12th Flying Training Wing at Randolph, commanded 8th Air Force at Barksdale, and a Joint Functional Component Command of Global Strike at Offutt, and also commanded 3rd Air Force at Ramstein. In addition to that, this is quite a resume now. General Clark served as a White House Fellow in D.C., as the Senior Defense Official and Defense Attaché in Cairo, and we've been hearing some very interesting stories about that assignment over dinner tonight. And most recently, he came to us from the Pentagon, where he was the Deputy Chief of Staff for Strategic Deterrence, Nuclear Integration at headquarters. So please put your hands together and welcome 21st Sup, Rich Clark.
Okay, thank you, Coach. I appreciate that. I call him Coach because when I was a cadet, Coach Gould was coach on the football team. So I can't, it's hard for me to call him anything else. In fact, he and I, we have so much in common. We both played Falcon football. We were both superintendents. We both have great wives. Yes, my wife Amy is right here. We're both old, you know. Yeah, the only difference is we all hit those milestones at a different point. You hit them much earlier than I did, so, and it shows, Coach, but that's good. And I do want to thank everyone, though, for being here tonight. This is a great night, an important night for all of us. I want to thank all of our NFEs. I want to thank the foundation for NFEs, our non-federal entities. That means all of the nonprofits that support us and what you do for our academy. And that's what this is all about tonight. So thank you for being here. I also want to say thank you for coming to help us as we get ready to sink Navy. No offense, we're all friends here. You know, but I will say I think the Navy fans are a little mad now. Last week was kind of rough. And in fact, I was trying to get some tickets for the game. I just needed 2 tickets. And at first I wasn't getting any. And then on Monday I had a friend say, hey, I have 2 tickets for you. And he was supposed to bring them to me, but he left them on the dashboard of his car. And when he came out in the morning, someone had smashed the window on his car and they left 4 more tickets. So I think it should be a good game tomorrow though, but it's always a tough one. It's always a tough one. And it'll be a grind, so we need all the support we can get. But in the end, we need to beat Navy. I also want to say what an honor and a privilege it is for Amy and I to be in this position right now. I look out the window here, and we were here in the Pentagon a year ago, and I remember when the chief called me into his office to tell me something. I didn't know what it was, but I thought it was either you're going to retire or you're going to get promoted. And then he said, nope, there's a third path and we want you to consider. And he asked me if I wanted to be the SUP. And in my mind, there was no question, but I had to talk to the boss first. And in her mind, there was no question. And we are so excited to be there. But I will tell you, it has not been easy. It has not been easy. And our country, our academy have been through some pretty tough times. In fact, there was one period there where I was just thinking, what have I gotten myself into? And here's what happened though. I was working with a 96 grad, his name's Kenny Ruffin, and he at the time was applying to be a White House fellow. And he called me on the phone and he said, hey, sir, we were talking through his application and he had one question that he was really stuck on, and it was, where do you see yourself in 20 years? And I thought, well, you have to think this through. You don't want to be arrogant. You got to be careful with this answer or whatever. And he goes, well, what did you say? And I pulled out my application, and this hit me like a ton of bricks. I pulled out my application that I filled in 2000, and I looked to see where did I want to be in 20 years, and it said I want to be the superintendent of the Air Force Academy. And I almost cried when I read that to him, and I took it to Amy and I said, Amy, it's tough. We're going to get through this, but this is where we're supposed to be. This is where we're supposed to be. So I am so honored to be a part of our school in this way. and it's the dream of a lifetime. But the reason that I'm honored, first, I have an amazing team, and they're here. We have our commandant here, Max Moga. We have our dean here, Linnell Latinger. We have our command chief, Sarah Sparks, here. We have our athletic director, Nate Pine. We have our executive athletic director, Jen Block, and just a whole host of incredible, passionate people who are every bit as passionate about being here as I am. That's what makes it great. But the thing that inspires me is our cadets. Every time I have a bad day or every time I go, man, here we go, a new thing for USAFA, the minute I see a cadet, it all changes. And I know my purpose. I know why I'm here, and I know that I speak for every one of us that is at the academy, and I know that I speak for you too. Because what we do, what all of our partners do, is about those cadets and the future that they're building for us. And you couldn't be more proud of them than to see how they handled COVID-19 and to see how they went through what I say is probably one of the toughest years, if not the toughest year that the Air Force Academy has been through during that pandemic. And to watch how they endured being locked down without being able to even go out of their dorms or downtown or into class, and how they continued to press with their education, and how the dean's team turned our entire program virtual, and how the commandant continued with military training, and the athletic director continued to win games. It was absolutely awe-inspiring, and it says something about our school. And we all know that, that saying that the true test of character is not during times of comfort and convenience, but during times of challenge and controversy. That's what Martin Luther King said. Our school has been through challenge and controversy, and we're still going through some of that. But I will tell you that our cadets are the best that they've ever been. And they're different. There's no doubt. They're different than my class. They're different than Coach Gould's class. They're different than every class. But we have to expect that. Our country evolves, our country changes, and so do our cadets and the people that come in. But when you look at them as individuals and the things that they're doing, I look at Mahala Norris, one of our track athletes. And last year, if you don't know her, she's about 4'6", maybe? I don't know, whatever the minimum is that you can have to get in, she's had to stand on her toes to make it. But she is one of the most incredible athletes you ever want to see. And when you watch last year at the NCAA championships, the 3,000 meter steeplechase that she was running in, it was the 5th time that she had ever even run the race. And she got in that race and came up to about the hip of the other women that were running. But she hung with them. And in that last lap, she came around the lap and she was in 3rd place on the final turn. She got up over the last obstacle and she tripped. And she picked herself up though. She didn't go hit the ground, but she stumbled, and then she knew that it was on. And she could see the finish line and turned in a performance. She passed the next 2 women to become the national champion in the steeplechase, winning it by the smallest margin in history. It was a lean and pure guts and desire that got her there. That's what our cadets are made of. Or you think of Mckenzie Steiner. She was a cadet. She's one of our cadet athletes as well, but she was up in Winter Park and was on a mountain bike ride. And she's just training on her mountain bike. She's going over a course that she's about to run a cross-country race in. And while she was there, she came across another rider that had a catastrophic accident. And the guy was on the ground. He had a major fracture in his leg. He had head injuries. He was going into shock. She had just come out of basic cadet training. In fact, she was in basic cadet training. She had just come out of the self-aid buddy care part of that, where you train on first aid. She jumped off her bike and went to work on this guy. She broke a limb off a tree and built a splint. She helped get his leg stabilized. She treated his head wounds. She treated him for shock. She called in first responders, and then she stayed with him all the way down until they got him into an ambulance, and she knew that he was going to be okay. And then she got back on her bike and finished the track. All right, that's our cadets. That's our cadets. Or I could do this all night, but I'll stop at this one. I gotta talk about this last guy, and I know the dean is super proud of him. Aramis Brown, Cadet Aramis Brown, going into the Space Force. He is one of the most humble, kind, intelligent people you ever want to meet. His dad is a 79 grad. His brother is a 2020 grad. His other brother is there now as a 24 grad. But Aramis is going to be delayed a couple of years before he goes to the Space Force because he's a Rhodes Scholar. And he has to go to Oxford to study for 2 years before he goes into the Space Force. He's our 42nd Rhodes Scholar. And we couldn't ask for a better example of a man, of an officer, of a product of our institution than Aries. So that's the kind of cadet that we have now at our academy. So you should be exceedingly proud of what they're doing. And the things that you do, the things that we do to make it possible for them, not to go serve in the next 5 years, but the next 15 or 25 or 35 years. That's what we have to do. That's what your leadership team is preparing them to do, because it's about our future as a country. They are our future as a country, and we are in a world of strategic competition right now, and we can't afford to sit back and try to solve the problems that we have now. We need our cadets to have the skills to solve problems that they don't even know about, and to present our adversaries with problems that they can't solve, so that we keep our country on the footing that we have to be in, and it depends on them. That's what you're doing for those great men and women at the Air Force Academy. So when we look at our school, when I first got there, I thought, man, this place looks like a construction site. But that's a good thing. That's a good thing. You look at the Holiday Athletic Center, that wasn't here when I was here 10 years ago. You look at the new air gardens that we've just cut the ribbon on. You look at the Madera Cyber Innovation Center that we're about to break ground on, the Institute for Future Conflict, Falcon Stadium that we're working on. You look at all of the great things that are going on at our Air Force Academy, and soon I hope to see a place for space, because we are the Space Forces Academy, and we're gonna own that. We're gonna own that. But it's all possible because of what you are doing and the reason that we're all here tonight. So I just wanna tell you thank you. Not just on my behalf, not just on behalf of our leadership here or our cadets. I want to tell you thank you on behalf of our country, because that's what we're investing in. We're getting them ready to go out and keep our country the best in the world. So thank you for what you do. Let's go out and be Navy.
Thank you, Soup. I thought we were friends all this time. I know. Hey, for the next few minutes here, we're really honored to have Ari Fleischer as our speaker. Ari, as many of you know, is the former White House press secretary to President George W. Bush. He served as the president's spokesman on 9/11/2001, and he will share some stories about that with us tonight. Just amazing experiences as we entered this global war on terrorism. After he finished his time in the White House, Ari wrote a best-selling book called Taking Heat, and I think you might understand why that might be the theme of a book of a guy in that job. He's also the founder and president of Ari Fleischer Communications, which is a highly successful venture that advises corporations and sports organizations with all their comm and media needs. He's worked for a whole bunch of different companies and leading sports leagues. I think notably, it's behind the scenes and you might not see it, but he's been the principal media advisor to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. Ari's a graduate of Middlebury College in Vermont. He lives in Westchester County, New York, where he's headed shortly after this event this evening with his wife, Becky, and their 2 children. I'm honored to introduce Ari, a great patriot and a great friend, Ari Fleischer. Give him a warm hand.
Well, good evening. I'm here to talk to you about college football. 4 college football fans are standing on top of a mountain, arguing about which one loves their team the most. One, I'm getting there. Calm down. One is a Coast Guard Bear. The other is an Army Black Knight. Third's a Navy midshipman. And the fourth is an Air Force Falcon. The Coast Guard graduate looks at his 3 friends on top of that mountain and says, none of you love your team as much as I love Coast Guard. And to prove it, I'm going to leap off this mountain. So he walks up to the edge of the mountain, looks down, leaps off, and all you can hear is, this is for the Bears. Well, the Army fan, he won't be outdone. He looks at his 2 friends on the top of the mountain. He says, neither one of you love your team as much as I love Army. And to prove it, I'm going to jump off this mountain. He walks up to the edge of the mountain, looks down, leaps off, and all you can hear is, this is for Army. Well, that leaves the Navy fan and the Air Force fan alone on top of the mountain. At which point, the Air Force fan walks up to the Navy fan, pushes him off the mountain, and says, this is for everybody. You don't have to clap. You're just being polite. General Clark, thank you so much for having me tonight. Thank you for all those beautiful words you said about the Air Force Academy. That is what tonight is all about, and it's stirring to hear it. And I can tell you, as somebody who worked in the White House, it's even more stirring to hear it from you, and to hear it from you on behalf of the future of the people who are going to keep us safe and free as a country. So I loved hearing those stories. Thank you for sharing them. General Gould, even though he called you older, it's always an honor, it's a pleasure. I got to know General Gould as part of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, and he was one of our best members on that committee, always thoughtful, always making good calls, and kind of like E.F. Hutton. When he had something to say, everybody listened in to General Gould. So always an honor. Thank you for inviting me as well. And Paula, it's great to see you again. I got to know you through the committee. Where's Chris Howard? Is Chris over here? And Chris Howard, I got to know Chris on that committee as well. Seems like the Air Force always puts its best on our committee. So pleasure to see you over there, Chris. But I've been asked to talk about the future. But to talk about the future, I want to take a step back in time for a moment too. To just over 20 years ago, I was sitting at my desk. I worked on the George W. Bush for President campaign. I was a New Yorker in Austin, Texas. I moved to Texas for 1 year to work on that campaign. I had been on Capitol Hill for some 17 years, working for senators, congressmen. I moved to Texas, broke my back, did everything you do on a campaign, worked incredible hours, poured my heart, poured my soul into a campaign job, as everybody on a campaign does, regardless of which side you were on. It was Election Day 2000. The phone rang. It was George W. Bush. And he said to me, when I win, which I will tonight, I want you to be my press secretary when we get to the White House. I instantly told him how honored I'd be. I accepted the job. He said, I'll see you at the victory party, and he hung up the phone. Well, little did any of us realize that election night would turn into election 6-week night, which it did in 2000. But as the recount went on and on and on, George Bush made the decision that we need to begin the transition into power. We were losing too much time we needed to start to make personnel decisions, policy decisions. We could not let this period of transition, period of uncertainty, eat up the limited amount of time we had between now and January 20th. So I packed my bags and I left Texas to get back to Washington, to set up a transition office even before America knew if the name of our next president was going to be President George W. Bush or President Al Gore. And I returned to this wonderful, wonderful town where I had lived for 17 years. It was a very familiar place to me. And ladies and gentlemen, when I drove past the White House, I literally averted my gaze. I could not bring myself to look at that building. That place where so many decisions have been made that have shaped the course, not only of American freedom and of American history, but of world freedom and of world history. I could not look at the White House until 2 weeks later when the Supreme Court ruled that George Bush won the election. And only then did I allow myself to look at the White House and say, I will be able to go inside as the spokesman for the President of the United States of America. And I couldn't wait. And right after Inauguration Day, 2001, I drove my car past at the time what were 2 blast-proof gates leading to the White House. Now there are 3, as the perimeter has been pushed farther back and farther back and farther back. I drove my car right up past the West Wing. I parked on West Executive Avenue right next to the West Wing. I walked into the West Wing as a Marine opened the door to the West Wing lobby, where I took a left turn. On the right is the Roosevelt Room, and on the left, the office of the White House press secretary, where my desk sat literally 30 feet from one side of me on the podium in the briefing room and 30 feet from the Oval Office on the other side of my office. And I couldn't wait to begin that job. And I remember sitting at my desk, it was March of 2001, and I was handed a note. It said, Ari, the president would like you to meet him on the South Lawn at 6 o'clock tonight to play catch. Well, President Bush was heading to Milwaukee, Wisconsin the next week to throw out the first pitch for the Brewers. They had a new ballpark, Miller Park, and the president's a very competitive man. He wanted to make sure he could throw the pitch over the plate. He knew I used to play a little baseball, and I had the honor of warming him up. So I showed up at the appointed hour on the South Lawn of the White House. I always keep a baseball glove in my car. I showed up on the South Lawn wearing a suit. President Bush, who had the advantage of living there, he showed up wearing sweatpants and a bulletproof jacket. And the 2 of us started to play catch on the South Lawn, and at one point the president threw a short hop, and it scooted past me, and it rolled down halfway down the South Lawn into a pack of flowers. And I remember jogging down the South Lawn. I found the ball in the flowers. I threw it back to the president, and we went back to playing catch on a lawn outside that building where just 3 months earlier I couldn't even bring myself to look at it. The president went to Milwaukee the following week, proceeded to throw the pitch straight in the dirt in front of home plate. Catcher picked it up on a short hop and said, "Perfect strike, Mr. President." Well, I loved everything about being the press secretary. I loved and I thrived under the pressure. I loved knowing what was going to be on the front page of the newspapers before anybody else even knew what would be on the front page of the newspapers. Everything about that job, the intensity, the pressure. I viewed that job as the most wonderful, intellectually stimulating, best, most pounding, difficult, hardest job I could ever hold. And I loved the paradox of that. The hardest thing to do was the thing that I loved the most. And that, I think, is true about a lot of things in government service. I think that's true about a lot of things in the military. What you do is incredibly hard. It is incredibly important. And it can be incredible pressure. And one thing I learned about myself, and I learned it on September 11th, 2001, was the worse things got, the calmer I became. I don't know how. I don't know why. I guess it was just in me, and it took a crisis for me to learn who I was. But everything about important government jobs has that same rubric to it. The only difference was in my job, when I stood at that podium every day for that live news conference, my job was to assume the position of a human piñata. And I loved that too. I loved letting the press fire whatever questions they wanted at me. And I loved standing my ground on behalf of a man and on behalf of policies that I believed in. I got to travel everywhere with President Bush. I got to be a firsthand witness to so many moments of history. I got to meet so many wonderful people. In this job, I twice got to meet Pope John Paul II. I once got to meet Shaquille O'Neal. Because I traveled with the president everywhere, I was with him all day on September 11th. From Barksdale Air Force Base to Offutt Air Force Base, back to Washington. And as Marine One came over the Capitol and down the mall and banked right to land on the South Lawn, from the president's seat at the front of Marine One, the Pentagon, smoldering, came into view. And the president said aloud to no one in particular, "That's the mightiest building in the world on fire. This is the face of war in the 21st century." He instantly got it. He instantly understood the asymmetrical nature of what we were about to have to deal with as a people, as a military, as a country. 3 days later, on the most difficult day I ever had, I returned home. I flew back to the city where I was born, back to New York, to accompany the president when he went to Ground Zero, where I'll be tomorrow morning. And as the president stood on some 7 stories of melted steel and ash from what used to be those 2 110-story high towers, and 1 hour later, I accompanied him to the Jacob Javits Center on Manhattan's West Side, where the president was supposed to have a meeting with some family members of those whose loved ones were missing 3 days after the attack. The meeting was supposed to last 45 minutes. It lasted 2 hours. Every single soul in that room believed that their loved one would come out alive 3 days after. I remember one woman came up to me and she told me that her brother was a Marine. And if anybody knew how to survive, she said, it was her brother. Sadly, not one relative of these good people was found alive 3 days after the attack. These are some of the things you see. These are some of the experiences you go through when you are in service to this country. It's what I went through in the service while I was at the White House. I went to China and stood on the Great Wall of China with Colin Powell and Condi Rice. I went to the back rooms of the Kremlin for meetings with President Bush and President Putin. And I stood at a cemetery in Normandy, France, on America's Memorial Day to pay honor to those who gave their lives so we could be here tonight. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of our country. This is the story of service. It's something you all know well. And you've asked me to talk about our future. What will the next 20 years be like? Well, from what I've learned, from what I've saw in government, certainly we know we're living through polarized times right now. But as someone who saw how instantly our nation came together on September 11th, I know that despite the current times we're in, divided, especially on domestic issues, but also on international issues, we remain one united country, especially on the big issues that matter the most. On 9/11, I saw instantly how quickly our country came together. Even after a president was elected in a bitter recount where many in the opposite party contended that the president was not a legitimate president. Several members of Congress boycotted his inaugural. Several refused to show up for meetings at the White House. My point being, we've been through divided eras before. But in an instant, sadly brought on by the attack, we joined together as one. For the men and the women in the military, you didn't need an attack on our country to be that way. You always are that way. You typify what it means to be, in the best sense of these two words, America first. Everything you do at the Air Force Academy stems from love of country. It doesn't matter who the airman or the guardian is, what their background is, where they came from, or what they look like. They're proud Americans, and you're role models for the rest of us. It's why I love our military. Just one side note. After September 11th, China reached out to the United States through the State Department, and they wanted to know how was it that the United States was able to engineer this incredible sense of love of country, this incredible sense of patriotism, this incredible unraveling of flags everywhere, wearing of flags on our lapel pins. And when we heard this at the White House, we laughed. They're asking us how we engineered this, as if this was top down? This was grassroots up. This was because we're Americans. This is because we love this country. September 11th did a lot to change us, but one thing it did that I'm always going to be proud of, it left behind an enduring bipartisan template for how to protect our nation. I'm proud that much of the infrastructure that was left behind, that was created after September 11th, remains in place. While there have been lone wolf attacks, there has not been an organized attack on our country since September 11th. As a result of the many changes that took place, that were put in place back in 2001, which have been continued by successive administrations, 2 Democratic and 1 Republican. We're better at sharing intelligence. We're better at having the FBI and the CIA cooperate and talk to each other and pass information between themselves. Our ability to gather intelligence has been substantially beefed up, including the FISA program, which won bipartisan support from the Congress in 2008. We're tougher as a nation. We're tougher as a people, and we're tougher as a military. We have drones capable now of doing things that we didn't do or wouldn't do prior to September 11th. And it's the Air Force who knows a lot about that. And while it's controversial in some circles, Guantanamo Bay was never closed, appropriately so, in my opinion. And our military is really good at protecting us. And the Air Force is a huge part of that mission. While some things have changed, we are more divided, our politics feels more coarse, and social media, which did not exist on September 11th, can inflame us in addition to informing us. But there's one thing that was true yesterday. It will be true tomorrow, the next day, and for the next 20 years, and it's the respect that the American people hold for its military and its values. It's the values that you live every day at the Air Force Academy. It's the values you exemplify when you put on that uniform. It's the values you exemplify as civilians by showing up and coming out tonight to support the foundation. And I've thought long and hard about why the military, alone among America's institutions, has been able to earn the trust of so many Americans, while virtually every other institution in our country, from Congress to big business to the church to the media, has lost trust of the American people over the last 20 years. I think the reason why is because you're special people and the country knows it. The country feels it. It sees it in your willingness to serve the fact that you did something most Americans don't. You volunteered. The fact that you volunteered for the Air Force right away makes you special. It makes you different. Your willingness to sacrifice, your understanding about what duty is all about, your knowing what discipline means, and the code that you live by and that you at the Academy teach every day to the cadets. It's a way of life many Americans respect, but aren't willing to subject themselves to. But we admire you for it. We're grateful to you for it, and we all hold you in high regard on account of it. The American people, I would say, are a happy people. We enjoy our lives, we enjoy our barbecues, and we enjoy our beers. But there's something inside us that knows the reason that we're free to do so is because of the men and the women standing watch. You're on alert, ready to fly, ready to protect, ready, as we saw in Afghanistan, to evacuate, ready and willing to fight and achieve superiority. It's why politically our nation may go through some phases that to some may feel uncomfortable, but our military does not swing in the wind. Our nation's political pendulum can swing. It can get tested. But our greatest strength is and will be a simple piece of paper. Our Constitution, the document that you swore to support and to defend. 20 years ago tomorrow, our nation was attacked. 20 years later, our military, whose men and women, sometimes fathers and mothers who serve alongside their sons and daughters, remains society's premier institution. September 11th defined a future for us that made us tougher, more willing to confront terror, while always being mindful that we're a compassionate nation, a good nation, willing to use our power to save a baby over a barbed wire wall in Kabul, or to bring justice to those who would do us harm. 20 years later, there have been no dirty bomb attacks against the United States, no biological attacks, or no other worst cases, which we were all told on September 12th. There's no question the second wave was coming. These were the threats we worried about the most. But because of you, because people like me, people like my bosses at the White House knew we could rely on you, none of that came to be. So when you ask me to define our future, what will the next 20 years be like? The only thing I can say to you with assurance is in 20 years from now, in 2041, your children, your relatives, you as younger cadets, you will be the ones keeping us free and keeping us great. It's who you are, it's what you do, it's what you're being taught, it's who you are as teachers. I cannot tell you how honored I am. Anytime, I made one promise to myself when I left the White House, and that was anytime anybody from the military asked me to do anything, my answer is always yes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for who you are and what you do. I'm honored to be here.
Ari, thank you for spending the evening with us tonight. And I wasn't kidding when I said he's headed back to New York. We've been watching the airplanes take off out of National, and in about an hour, Ari will be on one of them headed back, and he will be at Ground Zero tomorrow doing some work. Most of all, I just want to thank you for your love of country and your love of the military, and what he just told us at the end. When I asked, would Ari be able to help us out tonight, he said, absolutely, tell me when and where. So we appreciate you. And we have a presentation. Yeah, give him a... The Cadet Saber is one of the more coveted gifts that we give, and we would like you to have, here, let's step down so Ryan can get your picture.
Can you give me a note to get this through TSA?
One more hand for Mr. Ari Fleischer, please. Before we close the evening, and actually we'll get some dessert out and some more conversation, I want to send a special thanks to the AOG and Foundation team who have worked so hard for the events of this weekend. Fun event with a bunch of grads out at Topgolf yesterday. The session over in the hotel this morning on the Academy Showcase, where 9 graduates came back and led some panel discussions, and it would make every one of you proud to know what these people were accomplishing. Tonight's dinner, and several of the people I'm going to acknowledge here aren't with us here this evening because they're over getting ready to beat Navy and set up that tailgate where we'll have another roughly 750 people, I believe. Ari, adios. Have a good trip home. Yes, sir. But a special thanks, I would like to read the names here. Mark Hilly, Chris Brewer, Michelle Vikapitz, Gina Simler, Vince Greco, Ronnie Burton, Dale Shockey, Brian Campbell, Kelly Shelton, Wyatt Hornsby, Jeff Holmquist, Ryan Hall, Steve Lincoln, Roger Smith, Maddie Sobral, Michelle Bergman, and Karina Ross. Give them all a big hand for this wonderful setup. And finally, I want to thank all of you for helping us to launch this campaign, Defining Our Future. And that's what you all will do with your continued support. God bless you all. Enjoy your dessert and more conversation tonight. And be sure to get some good crew rest because we got a big day tomorrow. Let's go beat Navy. Thank you.